Welcome everyone to the Terminology Leading Practices stream of the SNOMED CT Expo 2023. My name is Enrana Hoyn, and I'm an implementation support specialist at SNOMED International, and I will be moderating today's session. All questions will be answered at the conclusion of the presentation, and for online attendees, please use the Q&A button to type your questions to the presenter. And on-site attendees, please use the microphone provided in the room. So just raise your hand and we'll bring the microphone. No, the microphone is there in the middle of the room. So just use that one. So I'm now pleased to introduce Guillermo Reynoso from TermMed, who will be presenting evaluating the role of batch pre-translation of SNOMED CT content using artificial intelligence and ontology-driven template-based translation. Guillermo, please go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I have been involved with the Spanish translation since 1995, and we have tried everything we could to try to make it more efficient. And my team always says, don't try so hard. Yes, because when you try to do any help, takes more time for us because you are trying to solve the easy things, and easy things are easy for us. We need help with the difficult ones. And so we have tried machine translation in the early days, and it was more or less perhaps 30–40% at that point in time. We were volunteering in the translation of SNOMED. We didn't have any funds others than what we could get working in shifts as physicians. And so it was trying to say, well, 40% of 100,000 concepts is a lot, is very good. The problem is that 40% was merged with 60% of mistakes that were quite easy to accept because we have a bias to accept something. It's different when you say, well, translate this, and you will come up with a solution. But if I say, is this translation acceptable? You say, yeah, sure. And so that 40% was producing, I don't know, 150% of work to review. So essentially, that's why we stopped doing that. And some of the persons that you see there have been with us more than 22, 23 years, begging for us not to continue trying to get help from computer-assisted translation. So we have done several generations of translation tooling. We are at the point where our translation is mature, is having to follow the international release. So in certain way, we are forced not to select what we will be translating, but what the SNOMED International is doing. So we see the QA initiative, for example, and the improvements in the naming conventions. So we see different things. And so different translation projects are quite diverse. So my point here is what I will be discussing today is part of our experience, or a bad experience, obviously. And that's what is valuable to share. And while we are doing this with our tools and researching that intensively, we are doing that conscious that every language pair is different, has different challenges, yes, have different editorial style guides and so on. So what may work for some may not work for others, yes. Okay, that's something that today we are essentially supporting some NRCs. We provide managed services, and we support some NRCs and some special projects. And for those NRCs like Canada or like Germany, they are evaluating the potential value of these techniques, but it isn't clear yet. So what we are really doing, everything that is going out of the door is manual translation plus template-based translation for selected artifacts, particularly clinical drugs. Yes, clinical drugs are nearly impossible to translate by hand because there are so many naming conventions that you have to generate them. So we will go through that. Well, I will be talking about how we try to automate this with our tools. Most of what we are doing here, you can do in the internet for free on different user interfaces. You will have just to juggle different Excel spreadsheets and so on. So you can test on your own whether your language pair may be helpful for this. Yeah. So I'll come back to that. So this is our translation environment. This is being used by Common French project initiative. It's being used by the Common German group. And obviously it's used by the Spanish edition. And the reason I have this, well, the main description panel is where we do the manual translation. And what you see in the lower right is, in this case, DeepL, a German company that provides machine translation based on neural algorithms. And it is pretty good. So far, in the words of Feike, what we had here was just for amusement purposes. Yes. Particularly if you're trying with Google Translate or Bing or other things. DeepL is much better. Yes. But I am showing you this slide to say, this is not what we are talking about today. Yes. This is getting the opinion of a machine translation that is trained with translation memories, huge language models, and it's kind of the mother of all translation memories. Yes. And so this is not what we consider important. Maybe that in some cases it is, you get a second opinion, but this is not what we are after, because this is not efficient in the long run. What we are after is coming back to our original experience. Yes, when 40% was good, 60% was bad. What we want is to improve that 40% that was good, perhaps to 50%, but take out the other 50% that is bad and don't even see it. Yes, if we are able, through a combination of techniques, of taking out the things that we know, or the patterns that we know are going to be bad, then we may have a more efficient shield of those other efforts. Yes, so, and that's why we are focused now here in large-scale translation or pre-translation. Yes, what you eventually do with those translation memory tools, where you previously take your translation memories and see how much you have already translated in other places. So, computer-assisted translation, it sometimes is any tool, not necessarily that will do the translation for you, but that will help you manage your workflow, escalate your problems, and so on. So what we will be talking here is this initial part. We will discuss a bit about the different translation projects and stages. We'll touch a bit on lexical templates, model-driven text generation that is very much used by SNOMED international templates, but we already get the logical model. So we can leverage that logical model to also do text generation in a different language, like a Spanish edition is doing for clinical drugs or for most medicinal products. And then we will talk about what we are researching and different stuff. Those of you that may be interested in continuing the discussion, we have a parallel session at 11:30, and where we will be discussing the priorities for the different countries that work with us, about the what we are going to be researching, what we will be applying for. In our case, pre-translation or a draft translation is just one of the scenarios. There are others that are quite interesting, like QA in terms of testing, and also trying alternatives for identifying good translations. Like, for example, with a machine, you can ask it to translate from English to Spanish, yes, and then ask it again, translate from Spanish to English, and then you have a back translation, yes. One of the major initiatives in translation, yes, you take one translator, ask for a translation, take the results, go to another translator, and ask the translator to go in the inverse direction for the language pair, and you say, if I got the same meaning, then the process has been transparent. Today, the machine may help us to do that. And we can also try to automate more things. And this is why we are trying to automate, because theoretically, if I translate from language pairs that are quite similar, like some Nordic languages or some Latin languages, if I translate SNOMED from English to Portuguese, from English to Spanish, from Spanish to Portuguese, and get back translation of all of that. And if everything there matches, I get for free something that seems a consistent translation. Yes, again, we are looking at trying to identify, the 40% that is good and ignore the 60% that we don't want to review. Yes, we will ignore that. Okay. Here is a classification, arbitrary classification of translation projects. When you are starting the translation, you are trying to have a proof of concept. You are cherry picking concepts of interest, yes, but you are not really facing some challenges like having to translate everything in a release to stay aligned. You don't have economies of scale, yes. So a starter is a few thousand concepts. You want to say, well, I want to translate 3,000, 5,000 concepts, 1,000, and see what my workflow is, what potential workload I can manage, whether I need more SMEs. I mean, those kind of things, proof of concept. There is no role for these kind of discussions. And what you eventually need is to train your team, and tooling is not certainly a problem. You can do it in Excel or whatever, yes. And then if you are driven by a particular use case, there probably is a group that will pick a subset or a subset. I would say, please translate these, vaccines or immunization or allergies subset, and then we will use that. Then again, allergies, for example, are easy to translate if you have already translated the substances, for example, because the rest of the pattern is repetitive. Yes, so we will see that is maybe good for machine translation, but it's even better for translation templates, because if you already translated the substances using your preferred term, then you can reuse that, referencing the model and doing the rest. So we'll see a couple of examples. Large scale translations, like, for example, the initial stages of the Belgium translation, they use lexical templates, yes, and have a strategy to say, well, if this is a large translation project, we will start with the reusable parts, yes, the things that are referenced in the attributes, so we can then build composite translation. Yeah, they had the problem that in French, for example, like in Spanish, you have inflection or inflection by gender, for example. So you have to do more work. You have to annotate whether it will be a feminine or masculine and so on, and what will be the corresponding structures. When you go for near complete translations, now your focus is what you will be doing with your translation depth, those things that you have translated and said, well, sometime I will review that, and then it is quite difficult to do it. So now the large size you are victims of your success. And obviously, when you have a maintenance translation like the Spanish edition and some other editions that have that are already completed, then it's critical to gain efficiency because we are trying to translate everything every month of every update of SNOMED International. And that's quite important because then we can see what the SNOMED International is doing. We can eventually provide feedback. We can do many other things, yes. Computer-assisted support, there are many areas here. The basics is provide context to the translator. To do that, you can use Excel and the SNOMED International browser in terms of looking at the hierarchies, lookup, and so on. Our team developed the SNOMED International browser in 2013, 2014. So our tooling is an extension of the SNOMED International browser. That's why it looks more like a SNOMED International tool than all the rest of the SNOMED International tools. No pun intended. So essentially, this is the easy part. Obviously, when you have a large translation that is going, I don't know, 10,000 concepts per month or 5,000 concepts per month, then task management, workflow escalation, those kind of things are significant. And that is what we usually try to at least have a traceability for. This is an example of a basic workflow that is driving the rest of the activities and the interactions, comments between the parties. So this is also, in certain way, assistance that the computer is giving you. But sometimes things go wild. Yes, so this is the Spanish edition translation workflow. Yes, what you have in green are starting points for the translation. Yes, they are events. So if it is a new process, a new concept, we have a process for it. If it is an inspection, to say, for example, the English edition has changed a preferred term or a FSN, or has inactivated, even if they inactivate the description in the English, we go back and inspect that to see whether eventually we got the borrowing, 20 years ago. And that is part of the depth I was telling you. And then if you do pre-translation or batch translation, you have also, you are also, after you are done with the machine part, you are sending it to a revision workflow that is different. Yeah. And the red states are end states, and the ones with narrow are promotions to release candidate. We have already talked about the right side. What you have on the left side is another way of computer-assisted translation that is giving you the editorial guidelines, the 500 pages editorial guide that is popular in AL courses. If you can have most of that in a way that is giving you that information just in time, yes, when you are seated on a concept that requires that kind of knowledge, then that is something that is usable. And not only the principles of the English edition, but also eventual advice about how you are translating it, or what are the principles, or whether you should escalate it, and so on. So machine-readable editorial guidelines is something that we would like to see progressing, and we would like to see eventual collaboration. One of our frustrations is that the editorial guide is kind of a moving target, so we need in a certain way to be able to reference that in an easier way. The Netherlands, I remember that did some work on this. We got back, and so you can specify an ECL for specifying the domain, or you can specify regular expressions, and so on. So it's one of our most ambitious projects. Lexical template. This is stolen from a presentation from the CSCT group from the Belgium collaboration a couple of years ago. And this is demonstrating lexical templates. So you reusable building blocks of the translations, but they are not really bound to the logical model. They are bound to different placeholders and replacements and so on. Very, very interesting approach. Yes, and if I will encourage you to go back and try to find that and to have this presentation, the whole presentation from Maria Alexandra in the translation resources pages of the translation group, because it's quite instructive in terms of saying if this is a large scale translation, then perhaps we should approach it differently. Yes, a more logical way. There is one problem though. It is the significant cost to do that. Yes. So sometimes perhaps with the new tooling and this massive AI-enabled machine translation, you are compiling a lot of that without having to go 1 or 2 years into preparing the substrate to have more efficient time data. Here we have lexical templates. The lexical templates here are based on SNOMED CT templates for logical definitions. This is a resource that, again, is already available, that is not translation, but text generation from the same logical model. So if they can do it in English, it may be that you can do it in your language. Obviously, some of you are in a desperate state. You will not be able to do that. Yes. So don't try this at home. If you have one of those languages that have composite words and where love and not love use the same word, like in Turkish. That was, we were told. So love, not love, be careful. So here I will encourage you to go see this documentation, try to use this, and you already have most of the concept model already taken care of in the international edition. So you only care about this, yes? And there is a kind of a way of expressing the template. So here what it says is there is a literal, a constant part that says allergy to, and then you replace that substance for the target substance preferred term in your previous translation. Yes. So usually when in every month, the first thing we do, the first day of the month, is to collect the substances that we don't have translated, translate them so we can reuse them for the medicinal products that we will be doing template-based translation. Yes. This isn't then model-based text generation. It could be ontology-based text generation, but just to avoid the discussion, we'll call this model-based. There are some issues here, particularly inflections in terms of gender in some languages. You will see that both in machine translation and in templates, there are additional processing steps. For example, parts of the translation that you want to remove, or for example, sometimes the removal of some articles or some prepositions. Yes. So this is another idea. You need to select very carefully the substrate of your translation. You need to apply a model that is efficient, and most probably you will have to post-process it, yes, to get the result. It's not easy to get the results in one step, because what is very good for a document is not good for a SNOMED. SNOMED, most of the concepts don't have a verb, don't have any clue for the translator. It's quite difficult to have context. Here we have another example of text-based, text generation with this CD precise discrete dose form. You'll see that there are many slots there. Trying to arrange them by hand is quite difficult. because after you have translated it, you realize that you have put them, sort them in alphabetical order, and and the descriptions perhaps 200 characters. Yes, so it's a nightmare. We don't even touch them. Yes, we only translate the substances and the things that we need in those logs. We let them be generated. Well, 2 minutes. Here we have an example with LOINC. Yes, if you have a full translation, it's very likely that you can do translation templates and translate at least similarly to what the English edition is doing. Yes. Templates are better in some situations, are worse in others. Yes. So if they are fully defined concepts, that's better. If they only have one role group, that's better. Yes. So pick your word. Yes. Don't go for everything. Don't be ambitious. Yes. Because you will end up reviewing a lot of garbage. This is DeepL. It is free to try it on the internet. So you can try, you can start translating from one pair to the other, compare different back translations, compare using other languages, like, for example, in Finland, use a Swedish translation and translate that, and then compare that automatically with the Swedish publication. And so you can get an idea of what are the translations that may be good. So here there is an example of applying a glossary to the translation of DeepL. So originally, when it was first done, this one at the very top, you see that it is translating literally open fracture, which is not what we want. We want exposed fracture, yes. And so you can affect that or train that using a glossary. And then in this case, we don't want that article in the first vertebra. So we remove that in post-processing to get something that is usable, yes. So, and what we want is an agile process for this. So that means that you can create these templates on the fly, yes, when you see an opportunity, yes. So you are trying to find pockets that are good, yes. So, and then you can use this translation you got to compare with what you have translated and whether there are synonyms that are missing there. This is essentially the same with a bit more examples. I believe you will have the slides. And as I said before, we are not going for single concepts. We are looking for areas of interest. On the left, you have the selection panel to say what's my substrate. 1 minute, I'm almost there. This is the same time I was given at the gala dinner. So on the left, I think that's the take home, yes. Narrow your substrate to something that is doable. Convert your project into something that is feasible. Avoid suicidal projects, yes. And then you use ECL. You select concepts that have only one role group. Those are much easier. And if they are fully defined, it's kind of they are waiting for us to translate in batch. And then use different steps to customize these. And well, precision of the results. This is about how many good translations you get from the rest. I will not get there now. Translation strategy, multi-step strategy. So we go step by step, and the translator is the one who is designing the strategy, and they can test the strategy in a dry run, yes, and if they like some of it, then they let the tool transform this into a SNOMED CT descriptions and send them to a revision workflow, and that is the case of building the last slides. Yes. Okay. The slides are going to be available. You can always stop me, and we are addicts to this kind of stuff. So no problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Guillermo. Yeah, and I'm sorry I had to cut you short there. Time goes fast when you have so much fun.